The courtroom doors slammed open with a force that made every head turn. A chill moved through the room, not from the air conditioning, but from the presence of a girl who walked in like she owned the world. She was 13 years old, dressed head to toe in expensive brands, phone in her hand, earbuds in her ears, and an expression that said she didn't answer to anyone. Not even the law. Behind her came her mother, Elena Rivera, eyes tired, shoulders heavy, the quiet posture of someone who has been fighting battles no one sees. But the girl Lila didn't even glance back. She didn't see the struggle. She didn't care. This wasn't her hearing. This wasn't her fine. But she was about to control the room. Judge Frank Caprio watched from the bench, his gaze steady, calm, unreadable. He had seen arrogance before. But something about this girl's cold disregard for her mother, for the court, for everything around her, sat differently. When her mother tried to speak, Lila didn't look up. She just said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Can we hurry up? I have better things to do." The gallery went silent. A silence that had weight. A silence filled with disbelief and something else, anticipation. Because everyone knew what was coming next. Not punishment. A lesson. And the lesson would not be gentle. Everyone in that room felt the tension tighten like a drawn bowstring, as if the air itself was waiting to snap. Before we go deeper into this moment, make sure you subscribe to Real Judge Stories for more courtroom transformations and unexpected justice. And leave a comment below right now. What would you do if this were your daughter? Because what happens next is something this child will remember for the rest of her life. It was a Wednesday morning in Providence Municipal Court, the kind where the air feels heavy even before anything happens. The courtroom was filled with ordinary people. Teachers, bus drivers, retirees, young parents with exhausted patience, each waiting for their turn before the bench. Low murmurs drifted in soft waves, the shuffle of papers, the echo of footsteps across polished floors. The scent of old wood and cold marble lingered in the space, solemn and undisturbed. Judge Frank Caprio sat at his bench, a figure of calm authority in a world that often lacked it. He reviewed files, his movements deliberate, practiced, familiar. He had seen thousands of faces sit where Elena would stand. People with mistakes, excuses, hardships. But today was different. Today something felt unsettled. Elena Rivera approached slowly, her hands clasped tightly, knuckles pale against the strain of holding herself together. She wore the kind of clothing chosen out of necessity, not style. Simple, worn, clean but tired. Her hair was pulled back in a way that said she didn't have time for herself, not anymore. And behind her, still scrolling her glowing phone screen without a flicker of awareness, came Lila. Two worlds. One bond. Breaking in real time, right there in front of everyone. Elena Rivera did not look like someone who belonged in trouble. She looked like someone who had simply run out of places to fall. The faint shadows under her eyes told more truth than any testimony ever could. They were the kind that weren't caused by makeup smudges or late-night distractions, but by years of sleep interrupted by worry, bills, responsibilities, and alarm clocks set far too early. She worked double shifts at a residential care facility just outside the city, 12 hours on her feet, lifting, cleaning, comforting, listening. She was the kind of person who stayed late when nobody else would. The kind of person who remembered birthdays for patients who had no one left to remember them. The kind of person who always gave even when she had little left for herself. But none of that showed on her face, not because she didn't feel it but because she had learned to hide it. Mothers do that. They tuck their exhaustion under their ribs and turn it into warmth for someone else. The courtroom could see the fatigue in the way she stood, shoulders drawn inward, hands clasped like she was trying to hold her own heart together. But there was dignity too. A quiet, steady sort. The kind that comes from surviving, not winning. Her citation was simple. 3 unpaid parking tickets and an expired vehicle inspection. Nothing dramatic, nothing criminal, nothing malicious. Just the kind of things that happen when life requires choosing between repairs and groceries, between registration fees and electricity, between the rules of the world and the needs of a child who never understood what those choices cost. She had tried to keep up. She had tried to stay ahead. But life has a way of piling faster than paychecks do. And behind her, with her eyes trained on a screen that cost more than one of Elena's paychecks, stood the child she loved more than anything, yet could no longer reach. Elena wasn't ashamed to be in court. She was ashamed that her daughter was seeing her like this. Not because it made her look weak, but because it made her daughter believe weakness was something to mock. Lila Rivera stood in sharp contrast to her mother, as though the two of them had walked into the courtroom from different worlds entirely. Where Elena carried the quiet weight of responsibility, Lila carried the effortless weight of entitlement. She wasn't trying to be rude. She wasn't trying to be cruel. The truth was more unsettling than that. She simply did not know any other way to exist. Her phone, bright and reflective, cast a soft glow across her face as she typed, scrolled, swiped, completely detached from the reality happening around her. Notifications lit up like fireworks. Her thumbs moved with practiced indifference. It was as though the world inside that screen mattered more than the people standing beside her, breathing the same air. The earbuds in her ears blocked out everything: voices, tension, consequence. They were a curtain, a wall she didn't even realize she had built. She wore a jacket with a designer logo across the back. Bold, loud, unmistakable. The kind teenagers dream of owning. The kind that costs more than most families' monthly grocery bill. On her wrist, a bracelet glimmered with tiny stones that caught the courtroom lights, scattering reflections across polished floors. People noticed, and they judged. Not because of the clothes, not really, but because the clothes did not match the reality standing beside her. There was a kind of carelessness in the way she moved. A swagger borrowed from someone older. Someone richer. Someone who had never been told to wait, to earn, to consider others. She didn't look at her mother, not once. Not when Elena stood. Not when she spoke. Not even when she exhaled with that small tremor only exhausted mothers have. When Lila finally lifted her gaze from the screen, it wasn't to observe the courtroom. It was to signal inconvenience. A sigh escaped her lips, loud, sharp, theatrical. The kind that wasn't meant to relieve breath but to declare annoyance to everyone within hearing distance. In that moment it became clear. Lila did not hate her mother. She did not resent her. She did not look down on her. She simply did not see her. Not the work. Not the sacrifice. Not the years of trying. To Lila, Elena was just there. A constant. A given. Something that did not require gratitude. The courtroom saw it. So did Judge Caprio. And the air shifted. The courtroom was not a loud place. Most people entered it already humbled, by mistakes, by fines, by life itself. But now the silence took on a different texture. It was tense, almost electric. Eyes shifted. Not in cruelty. Not in hatred. But in disbelief. A woman in the second row, holding a folder of daycare payment receipts, paused mid-page and stared. A man in a construction uniform, calloused hands resting on his knees, leaned forward slightly, his brows drawing together. A young college student waiting for her speeding citation bit her lip and looked down, as though watching a version of herself she was grateful to have outgrown. It didn't take words to communicate the room's reaction. Just looks. Just air. Just the unspoken awareness of something deeply wrong. Elena felt that weight. She didn't look up to meet anyone's eyes, she didn't have to. She could feel the judgment not directed at her fine, but at the distance standing between her and her daughter. A distance that had nothing to do with steps and everything to do with years of being overworked, overwhelmed, and overruled by circumstances she never chose. Lila didn't notice any of it. Or worse, she didn't care. She adjusted her earbuds. Rolled her eyes. Tapped her screen. As though the silence around her was boring. As though the world existed solely to wait for her convenience. Judge Caprio watched the room, not just mother and daughter. He saw the shift, the discomfort, the sympathy collecting around Elena like a protective circle. The courtroom was choosing sides. And it was choosing quietly but decisively. Judge Caprio cleared his throat softly, just enough to draw attention back to the bench. The quiet conversations of the courtroom faded once more into stillness. Papers were set down. A few people leaned back, waiting for the familiar rhythm of fines, explanations, and rulings. Mrs. Rivera, he began gently, I have before me 3 unpaid parking citations totaling $420, along with an expired vehicle inspection. I'd like to hear your explanation in your own words. Elena nodded, her hands tightening together. Your Honor, she began, her voice faint but steady, I work as a nursing aide at the Ridgeview Residential Center. I've been covering double shifts for the past month, short-staffed holiday schedules, no one else available. I was coming home late and the parking tickets, they just kept adding up. I wasn't ignoring them, I was just trying to handle everything else first. Her voice trembled at the end, not out of guilt but exhaustion. Before Judge Caprio could respond, a sharp sigh sliced across the room. Lila. She didn't look up. She didn't remove her earbuds. She simply said, loud enough for every person in that courtroom to hear. Here we go again. A few heads turned sharply. One woman in the front row closed her eyes, as though needing patience on behalf of someone else. Elena's voice cracked. Lila, please. Lila finally looked up, only to roll her eyes so dramatically it nearly echoed. "It's not that serious," she muttered. "Just pay it. It's embarrassing being here." The words were simple, but the impact was devastating. Not because of volume, but because of what they revealed. Elena froze. Judge Caprio didn't speak. Not yet. The man in the construction uniform let out a slow exhale through his nose, the kind men make when they've seen too much and know exactly what it means. Lila continued, as though narrating her own inconvenience. "And I really don't want to miss my plans today. So can we speed this up?" That did it. The silence became something else, sharper, heavier, tighter. Judge Caprio's hands folded on the bench. His voice when he finally spoke was calm. Not angry. Not stern. Calm in a way that demanded attention. "Miss Rivera," he said. Lila didn't look up. "Miss Rivera," he repeated. This time the room seemed to move around the words, carrying them to her. Lila glanced up with a raised brow, expression dripping with bored impatience. "What?" That one word, flat, dismissive, careless, hung in the air like smoke. The courtroom didn't move, didn't breathe. Elena closed her eyes just for a moment, gathering whatever pieces of strength she still had. Judge Caprio studied Lila carefully. Not harshly, not judgmentally, but like someone witnessing a crossroads. "Your mother is speaking on something that affects her ability to support you," he said quietly. "And you will show respect while she does so." Lila shrugged, sinking back into her phone. Whatever. It was so soft, so casual, so deeply cutting. The gallery didn't gasp. They didn't need to. The silence said everything. The line had been crossed, and the lesson was coming. Judge Caprio allowed the last word to settle, whatever, like dust floating in still air. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't bang the gavel. He didn't need to. The quietness of his demeanor held more weight than shouting ever could. He leaned back slightly in his chair, observing Lila the way a teacher watches a child who has not yet understood the consequences of the world they move through. His gaze was steady, not angry but deeply thoughtful. "Miss Rivera," he began, speaking not to Elena, not to the courtroom, but directly to the girl who thought none of this concerned her. Lila glanced up again, though this time there was a faint flicker, annoyance mixed with uncertainty. "These proceedings may not be about you," Judge Caprio continued, "but your behavior is." The room was silent enough to hear the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. "Your mother," he gestured gently toward Elena, "is here because she's been working to provide for you. Working through exhaustion. Making choices no parent wants to make. And your response to her efforts." He paused, letting the weight hang. "Is to be inconvenienced." Lila shifted ever so slightly. Not much, but enough for the room to notice. A break. A crack. A hairline fracture in her confidence. Judge Caprio didn't lean forward. He didn't need dominance to assert authority. His presence had already filled the room. "Elena," he said softly, turning to the mother, "how long have you worked at the care facility?" 12 years, she whispered. "And you are raising your daughter alone?" Elena nodded. The judge's tone remained level, but it carried the kind of gravity earned through decades of listening to stories just like this one. "Miss Rivera," he said again, facing Lila, "your mother has given you more than you'll ever understand. But today is the first day you will begin to." Lila blinked. The room didn't move. Everyone felt it. This was the moment where everything was about to change. Elena took a slow breath. The kind of breath someone takes when speaking means reopening old wounds. Judge Caprio gave her time. He always gave time where time was needed. "My husband and I separated 3 years ago," she began, her voice measured but fragile around the edges. "His name is Mark. He works in corporate law downtown." She hesitated, as if saying his name still carried weight she wished she didn't feel. The courtroom listened. He was always charming, smart, confident. And in the beginning he was kind. Or at least he seemed like he was. Elena's eyes lowered. But somewhere along the way the kindness faded. And the expectations grew. She swallowed. He wanted a life we couldn't afford. A lifestyle he thought we deserved, or that he needed to show the world he had. And when I couldn't keep up with that, when bills started piling and sacrifices became daily routines, he didn't adjust. He just left. Her hand trembled slightly at her side, but her voice continued, steady because someone had to be. "He pays child support when he feels like it, when it's convenient, but he never misses a gift. Trips, shopping, designer clothes, the newest phone. Anything that makes him look like the fun parent. Anything that makes me look like the one who is failing." The room shifted, just slightly, empathy landing like soft rain. Lila's eyes flickered upward, just for a second. Every time she comes home from his apartment, Elena continued, she looks at me differently. Like I am small. Like I am something to be tolerated. Her voice cracked, not loud, not dramatic, just real. I don't blame her, she whispered. She's a child. She's being shown two different worlds. One full of ease. One full of work. Of course she would choose the one that feels lighter. She lifted her chin, not in defiance but in dignity. But I love her. Every hour I work is for her. Every bill I choose to pay before another is for her. Every meal I cook half asleep is for her. And it hurts to be resented for the sacrifices no one sees. The gallery sat still, no shifting, no sighing, no judgment now. Elena finally turned her head, slowly, toward her daughter. I'm not embarrassed to struggle, she said softly. I'm embarrassed that you think struggling makes me less. Lila's phone screen dimmed to black in her hand. Her fingers loosened around it. For the first time since she entered the courtroom, she was actually here. Not in the brand. Not in the attitude. Not in the imitation of a lifestyle she didn't understand. Here, with her mother. Judge Caprio allowed the silence to rest, because sometimes silence speaks louder than reprimands. Then he spoke not as a judge but as someone who had raised children of his own. Lila, he said gently, your mother has not failed you. She has carried you. The words landed. Not like a sentence. Like truth. Heavy. And finally heard. Judge Caprio's gaze shifted fully to Lila now. Not the room. Not the case file. Just her. Lila, he said, and her name sounded different in his voice. Not annoyed. Not frustrated. Just true. She didn't look up immediately. But the silence around her grew so complete that ignoring him became impossible. Slowly she lifted her eyes. And for the first time there was no smirk, no shield, no practiced aloofness. Just a girl. I want to ask you something, Judge Caprio continued. And I want you to answer honestly. Not for me. Not for this courtroom. But for yourself. Lila swallowed. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. When your father buys you these things, he gestured gently, the phone, the jewelry, the clothing, do you believe he is doing it because he wants you to feel loved? Or because he wants to feel admired? The question hit the room like a quiet strike of thunder. Soft, but impossible to ignore. Lila's lips parted, not to speak but because she didn't know what to say. And when your mother wakes at 5 in the morning to work a 12-hour shift, he continued, when she comes home to cook dinner, to pay bills, to keep you fed, clothed, safe, do you believe she is doing that for admiration? Lila looked at her mother, really looked, perhaps for the first time in years. No, she whispered. The word barely existed. But it mattered. Judge Caprio nodded, not triumphant, not stern, understanding. We live in a world, he said softly, where it is very easy to confuse love with possession. Comfort with value. Money with care. But the truth is simple even when life is not. He leaned forward slightly, his voice gentle. The person who sacrifices for you is the person who loves you. A tear slipped down the side of Elena's cheek, silent, unannounced. Lila's chest rose unevenly, breath catching in her throat. And sometimes, Judge Caprio said, we don't realize love when we have it, until we have hurt the person giving it. Lila's eyes dropped. She wasn't protecting anything now. Not pride. Not image. Not posture. She was just a child, one who had finally seen the cost. The room held still, not waiting for drama. Waiting for change. Judge Caprio let the air settle again before he spoke. He wasn't rushing. Change never happens in a rush. It happens in moments like this, quiet, undeniable, unforgettable. Lila, he said, his voice steady, I am not angry with you. The gallery shifted slightly, surprised. Lila looked up again, confusion flickering. I understand you, he continued. You are young. You are being pulled between two versions of life, one that looks easy and one that is real. And no one has explained to you what those differences mean. He didn't raise his tone. He didn't need to. So I am going to help you learn. Lila didn't move. Elena watched her daughter like someone afraid to hope. You will complete 40 hours of community service, Judge Caprio said. Not as punishment, but as perspective. The phrase landed differently than any disciplinary sentence ever could. You will volunteer at Evergreen Assisted Living Center, he continued. You will spend time with people who have lived long lives. People who have worked, sacrificed, endured loss, found joy, survived change. People who know what matters and what does not. Lila exhaled, shaky. 40 hours? She asked, her voice small. Very small. Yes, Judge Caprio said. 4 hours every Saturday for 10 weeks. You will sit with them. Talk with them. Listen to them. And maybe, if you allow yourself to, you will understand something that cannot be bought. Lila blinked hard. Her jaw trembled, not in defiance this time, but in something closer to realization. Elena covered her mouth, trying to hold back tears that had been waiting for years. Judge Caprio continued softly. And during those hours you will not have your phone. The courtroom didn't react with shock. It reacted with meaning. Because everyone knew exactly why. Lila nodded, not because she wanted to, but because something inside her had shifted. Just slightly. Just enough. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. Not gritted. Not sarcastic. Not forced. Real. Elena's shoulders loosened for the first time since she entered the courtroom. And the lesson had begun. 6 weeks passed. Not quickly. Not easily. But noticeably. The first Saturday at Evergreen Assisted Living Center was the hardest. Lila walked in with guarded shoulders and uncertain steps, the absence of her phone almost like phantom weight in her hand. She didn't know where to look. She didn't know what to say. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't have anything to hide behind. The coordinator, a soft-spoken woman named Marjorie, led her down quiet hallways where time moved slower and memories lived on lampshades and picture frames. Lila didn't understand any of it. Not yet. Then she met Mrs. Fletcher. 81. Small. Heart-shaped glasses. Hands that trembled when they moved but never when they held. Her first words to Lila were not about manners. Or behavior. Or respect. They were, "You remind me of my granddaughter. Tell me about your life." Lila didn't know where to start. So she didn't. She listened instead. Over the weeks, the stories came like sunlight through thin curtains. Mrs. Fletcher spoke about raising children on a seamstress's income. About losing her husband in a factory accident. About stretching meals through winters that didn't forgive. About the pride of earning everything instead of being given anything. And something inside Lila softened. Not all at once. But piece by piece. Like thawing. She learned how to brew tea just the way Mrs. Fletcher liked it. 1 sugar, no milk, steeped patiently. She learned how to fold blankets the way the nurses did. Corners neat, tucked, intentional. She learned how to sit in silence without needing to fill it. More importantly, she learned what effort looks like without recognition. One afternoon, Mrs. Fletcher placed her frail hand over Lila's. "Your mother loves you in the hardest way there is," she said quietly. "The kind that gives without applause." Lila felt her throat tighten. And she didn't fight it. She didn't hide it. She let the tears come, small at first, then real. For the first time, she understood that love was not measured in gifts. It was measured in sacrifice. By week 6, she wasn't counting hours. She was showing up early, helping other residents, carrying trays, folding laundry, holding hands. Not because she was told to, because she wanted to. The girl who once rolled her eyes in a courtroom was beginning to see, not just others, but herself. It was a Thursday afternoon when Elena and Lila walked back into the courthouse. This time they didn't enter separately. They walked in together. No earbuds. No phone in hand. No expensive jacket broadcasting status. Lila wore a simple sweater and jeans, her hair tied back in the same style Elena often wore. There were no dramatic gestures, no performance of humility. Just a quiet presence. A shift in how she took up space. Judge Caprio noticed immediately. He looked up from the bench and offered a small, genuine smile. "Miss Rivera," he said. "You look different." Lila nodded once, not shy, not proud, simply honest. "Yes, Your Honor." Elena stood beside her daughter, hands relaxed for the first time, not clenched in worry or apology. She didn't speak right away. She didn't need to. The silence between them held something new. Judge Caprio addressed Lila gently. "Tell me about your time at Evergreen." Lila took a steady breath. "At first, I didn't want to be there," she admitted. "I thought it was just something to get through. But then I met Mrs. Fletcher. She told me about her life and I realized, I don't really know much about my mother's life either." Elena's eyes shimmered. She didn't wipe the tears. She let them fall. Lila continued, voice softer now. "I used to think the things my dad bought me meant he cared more. But those things don't last. They don't stay." She paused. "My mom does. Every day. Even when I didn't see it." "No theatrics. No sudden breakdown. Just truth. Real truth." "I want to do better," Lila said. "Not because I'm being punished. But because I didn't realize what love looks like until now. Judge Caprio nodded, deeply moved but composed. That, he said, is the lesson I hoped you would find. He turned to Elena. You have done well, even when it was hard. Elena exhaled, a release years in the making. Lila reached out and took her mother's hand. Not the dramatic kind of gesture that draws attention. The kind that heals. The courtroom stayed silent, but everyone felt it. Something had been repaired. Not perfectly. Not permanently. But genuinely. And that was enough. There are moments in life when we are forced to slow down and see the people who have been standing beside us all along. Not because they demanded recognition. Not because they asked for gratitude. But simply because they never left. Love is not measured in gifts or brands or convenience. Love is measured in time, in effort, and in the quiet sacrifices no one praises. Lila learned that lesson not through punishment, but through understanding. And Elena was reminded that even the smallest shifts in the heart can change the direction of a life. Stories like this remind us that respect is not automatic. It is taught, modeled, and earned. If you believe these moments matter, subscribe to Real Judge Stories to witness more transformations like this one. And tell us in the comments, what does love look like to you?